with you again as we walk through some of the questions that have come my way or the way of the leadership as we're reading through the Bible. One of the questions that comes up frequently here and at other churches and people that I've interacted with is, why did God tell His people to go into the land, the promised land, and kill everybody? Isn't that genocide? Well, no, it's not. When we look back when God was speaking to Abraham in Genesis 15:16, He told Abraham something. He says, the iniquity of the Amorites. The Amorites were an offshoot of the Canaanites, who were a descendant of Ham, which is one of Noah's sons that got off the ark. They were a very, very wicked people. So the Ammonites, the Canaanites, and others. They were very terrible, they were wicked, they were warring, and they also were heavily involved in child sacrifice. They would kill their children on the molten hot hands of Molech. And their people felt that sacrificing their gods to Molech was important. And so God was saying, this is only going to be allowed to continue for a certain length of time. And then so, as God is bringing His people out of Egypt and they're bringing them into the land, God said, you have to remove that iniquity from the land. Now, whenever people go down the road of worshiping God wrong or they're doing wrong things, innocent people are going to suffer. We also have to understand what's going on in the land. Well, there is false worship. If we understand our New Testament correctly, Jesus said in John 8:44 that Satan is the father of lies. And so if there is a worship that is a lie, the worship that is not of God, then it's false. It is a lie. That goes all the way back to Genesis chapter 3. So Satan is the author of all false worship. So what God told His people to do is to remove all the false worship and the people that were practicing that from the land. Were there innocent people that were going to get swept up in that? Yes. Anytime there's war, there are innocent people that get hurt, as we're going to see later with the nation Israel. So God told them to go in and purge the iniquity from the land because God was bringing His people into the land to set up a theocracy so that the other nations could see how people that lived for God lived, and the other people would say, those are a people who serve a wise God. And so that's what God was setting up. So He had to remove that from the land. Now, did Israel do that? No, they didn't do it fully. In some cases they did it, but they were still disobedient. In their disobedience and not following God, that led to iniquity within the nation. If you read the book of Judges, it's a train wreck. It's terrible. There is cycle after cycle of God's people that are worshiping incorrectly and doing wrong things, and innocent people get hurt. So that continues on, and then we get into the divided kingdom. And the divided kingdom is not worshiping God the way that they're supposed to. So what God does is He judged them. He says, if you continue to do that, I'm going to send other people from a different tongue to discipline you. So what happened? The Assyrians came in and took the northern kingdom. So God's own people that chose to go against God, they were taken into captivity by the Assyrians. Were innocent people of God's people injured and hurt and lost their life? Yes. And then it continued in the southern kingdom of Judah, the Assyrians, and then the Babylonians come in. Were there innocent people, innocent God's people that died because the leaders failed to worship God? Yes. So when leaders don't do what they're supposed to do, and they go down and they're worshiping false gods, people will suffer. So the idolatry in the land had to be purged to set up a perfect land for a theocracy so that people could worship God, the Jewish people. They failed. And so God took them into captivity, and many innocent people got hurt. But what we see is that God demands perfection. And so in that, since mankind proved we could not do it, then there is one that came that was 100% innocent, that died and suffered for all of us, and that is Jesus Christ. But with all of that, we also see in the flood, there was wickedness all over the world, and God destroyed the world with a flood. There were innocent animals, there were innocent children, there were probably innocent people that died in that. But the bloodiest book of the Bible is the book of Revelation. And finally, God will judge sin. We see that judged in the book of Revelation. and it will be very destructive. And so what is our job now, knowing all of this, is to share Christ with whoever we can, wherever we can, as often as we can, so that they would be on the receiving end of grace.